For its starting price of $1,800, the new Galaxy Z Fold 4 doesn't offer anything too big or fresh over its predecessor, but nonetheless it's arguably the most incredible smartphone for tech enthusiasts and Android power users to date. With many empowering multitasking features, stylus support, big and beautiful folding display, and respectable battery life, the Z Fold 4 is not only a phone in your pocket and a tablet in your hand, but can even be your PC replacement. Hey, I'm Radu with PhoneArena and you're watching our review of the new Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4. When folded, this is a candy bar shaped phone that, as my niece commented when she first saw it, looks like two phones glued together. It's not notably thinner than its predecessors, although it is technically the lightest Z Fold to date at just 263 grams. It feels very premium and substantial in the hand, and since Samsung has managed to reduce its hinge bulge and the outer display's bezels, it looks better than ever. We have a familiar premium glass and metal design, with the back having a nice smooth matte finish. As the Z Fold 4's name suggests, and surely you know this, you can fold and unfold this phone, and well, it takes a bit of effort to unfold it. You don't really have a spot to stick your finger in and start pulling the two halves apart, so you better have some nails, and you better not be sweaty as the Z Fold's frames can get a bit slippery. Also, there can be a slight creaking sound when unfolding it still, although that's rare. You get used to all that, but surely it's not the peak of what a foldable experience can be. On a more positive side, closing the phone is smooth and easy and feels quite satisfying as it happens with a reassuring magnetic snap. We have dual stereo speaker grills, one on top and one on the bottom of the phone, plus a USB Type-C charging port. On the sides we have the volume keys and a power key with an embedded fingerprint scanner. No in-display fingerprint scanner here. For those who are hoping, unfortunately there is no slot for the S Pen stylus either, nor do you get one out of the box. Let's talk about the displays, starting with the cover display. It's a tall 6.2-inch AMOLED screen capable of up to 120Hz refresh rate. Like we mentioned earlier, Samsung has reduced the bezels around the display, and there is no longer a hump to the left, as the hinge is smaller than last year too. And what can you use the cover display for? Basically anything. Answering calls, replying to texts, browsing social media apps, anything you wouldn't bother unfolding the phone for. Sure, it's still a rather tall and not very wide display, but I wouldn't call it cramped. Using the on-screen keyboard is not a problem, and again, it's big enough for most tasks you may want to do without actually unfolding the Z Fold 4. But now let's do just that and unfold the phone, revealing its gorgeous, big 7.6-inch flexible display. Again AMOLED, again 120Hz, again very beautiful. Watching YouTube videos and movies, playing games, scrolling through social media apps or browsing the web on this display is an absolute joy. I can't oversell how cool it is to take a phone out of your pocket and be able to turn it into a tablet with a big display, which by the way is very comfortable to hold, especially compared to a tablet thanks to its smaller size and weight and its squarish aspect ratio. But let's talk about display feel. The Z Fold 4's flexible display still feels a bit softer than the average glass screen, as we could have expected. It does support the S Pen stylus though, so obviously it won't scratch easily, save from just your fingernails. You can press it and poke it pretty hard with zero issues. There is a visible screen protector applied to the display with corners that don't fully reach the display's edges, and as we all know by now, you shouldn't remove it, so that's just part of the screen. Also, there's still a crease in the middle of the folding screen. It is visible when light hits it, and you can definitely feel it. Is this a big deal or just a small price to pay, aside from the actual price, for using a cutting-edge folding smartphone? Honestly, I don't mind the crease, but I can't help but notice that some Samsung competitors, notably Oppo with its Find and Foldable, have managed to completely remove the crease. But that's what the Z Fold 4's display situation is like. Nothing new or major worth talking about, except maybe the fact that the aspect ratio has been very slightly changed a little bit to be a bit wider. So let's turn our attention to the cameras. The camera module of the Z Fold 4 is virtually identical to its predecessor, but the actual cameras inside have changed. There's a main 50MP wide camera with optical image stabilization, a 12MP ultra-wide and a 10MP telephoto with 3x optical zoom. Combined with digital zoom, you can zoom up to 30x for photos and up to 12x for videos, and the results are actually pretty good. So the big current trend of flagship phones getting lots of camera zoom is covered here. There's no quality loss at 3x zoom since that's optical, and while there obviously is a 30x zoom, it's actually looking pretty good still. Now let's have a look at how portrait mode photos look on the Z Fold 4, the feature that aims to blur the subject's background so that only the subject is in focus. As you can see, this works pretty well too, although keep in mind that you have to be pretty close to the subject for that background blurring effect to kick in. Now let's check out how main and ultra-wide camera shots look in general. We took the Z Fold 4 for a few spins on beautiful sunny days, taking camera shots in perfect lighting, and the results are pretty satisfying. The bright skies look great, clouds are detailed and color correct, no overexposure. Details in the people, building and vegetation we captured are sharp and clear, colors are accurate. Occasionally some of the more difficult shots did result in overexposure, but it's nothing deal-breaking. So, as we mentioned earlier, the Galaxy Z Fold 4 has 2 displays and thus 2 selfie cameras, one for each. The cover screen selfie camera is a standard hole punch one, 10 megapixels, nothing unusual here. The folding screens camera though is a 4 megapixel under display one, which you can definitely spot if you're looking for it, as above it is an area of less dense pixels that it shoots through. But does it see well through those pixels or not? Well, sometimes in bright scenes there's a visible color banding like effect on selfies taken from it, so it's not seeing perfectly well through the pixels just yet, but check the results for yourself and let us know what you think. So I don't know how many of you would be snapping selfies with the under display camera, but you'll definitely be better off using the more traditional cover selfie camera. By the way, note that although the area of less dense pixels over the under display camera is noticeable if you look for it, in normal use your brain completely forgets about it, just like with the crease. I personally would have preferred if Samsung just removed that second selfie camera altogether, but these days I might be a minority in wanting less cameras. Before we move on to video quality, let's look at how the Z Fold 4's main and selfie cameras perform in low light conditions, namely at night. Basically, night shots are about on par with what you'd get from a modern base flagship, particularly the Galaxy S22. Even when taking pics in near pitch black, you get reasonable detail and colors, and for selfies the screen lights your face up as a flash would, so those would be pretty clear too, albeit a bit soft. Time to move on to video quality. The Z Fold 4's one of many features is the fact that you can half unfold it, pointing the camera half at your face, and essentially getting a hands-free video calling experience. This phone is technically its own camera stand, and that's pretty cool. But since the under-display selfie camera is most interesting and unusual here, let's start by showing you how that one would look during your video calls. Last but not least, here's a more in-depth video sample from the Galaxy Z Fold 4's main and ultra-wide cameras, and showcasing zooming and video stabilization. There's a bit of visible over-sharpening and occasional overexposing, but for social media, things are looking good. And that zoom is actually quite impressive. Speaking of impressive, so is the video stabilization. If you've got shaky hands, you needn't worry about it. Now let's talk about all of the cool software features that this phone has. To me, the Galaxy Z Fold 4 is a power user phone above all else for heavy multitaskers and tech enthusiasts who wish to make the most out of just one device. And Samsung thought of that, giving us all the features you might need. The Z Fold 4 comes with Android 12L and One UI 4.1 on top. And at first glance you get a pretty normal Android phone experience. We have a familiar home screen with app icons and widgets, but open an app like Chrome and you'll notice that there's a taskbar now. That handy little taskbar has a Windows-like power button for accessing all of your apps at any time. It also holds your favorite and recently used apps, plus the navigation keys, home, back and recent apps. It's so useful to have this fixed taskbar on a phone, for quickly switching between apps or dragging an app from it over your current app, opening both at the same time in split view. You can even drag over a third app for running 3 apps across the screen. Or if you get greedy, you can even drag more apps over those 3, which will start opening in pop-up windows. The multitasking experience on the Galaxy Z Fold 4 is absolutely top tier and basically puts most other phones and even tablets like the iPad Pro to shame. Samsung did not skimp on the power user features. But you don't have to stop there. Your Galaxy Z Fold 4 isn't just your phone and your tablet in one, it can even be your PC, kind of. You can connect it wirelessly to your Windows PC or an external display by enabling the Samsung DeX feature, which is just a tap away, and you'll get a full-blown Android desktop mode. The Z Fold 4's interface would completely change to something more akin to macOS or Chrome OS or even Windows, with its own desktop, app icons and a taskbar. Apps will start opening in fully resizable windows too. Again, I'm very impressed with all of those amazing power user features Samsung delivers with the Z Fold 4 and would argue that it's the best power user phone to date by far. No feature seems like an afterthought, everything is intuitive and polished. And of course, if you want to use a stylus with your Z Fold 4, you can. And you'll get specific features for that too. Just remember to buy either the S Pen Pro or the S Pen Fold edition, because I tried. Other S Pens won't work here as their tips are harder and Samsung fears that they might scratch the display. Now let's move on to the battery. For its size, the Galaxy Z Fold 4 has a seemingly rather small 4400 mAh battery split between two cells, one on each side of the phone. But don't let that fool you, this phone is no slouch when it comes to battery life. For example, in our YouTube playback battery benchmark, where we basically stream YouTube videos until the battery dies, the Z Fold 4 lasted nearly 9 hours. In terms of charging, the Z Fold 4 comes with 25W wired charging support, which can deliver up to 50% charge in roughly 30 minutes. Samsung doesn't give you a charger out of the box, by the way, so you'll have to get one separately. We also have 10W wireless charging, which is convenient and nice to see on a foldable in general. So, it's time for some final words on the Galaxy Z Fold 4. While it's not a major upgrade over its predecessor, the Galaxy Z Fold 4 is arguably the best smartphone for the tech enthusiast who wants to do everything with just one device. It's a phone, it's a tablet, and it can even act similarly to a PC. With many amazing polished power user features such as split screen and windowed multitasking, a new taskbar, Samsung DeX, and stylus support, the Z Fold 4 fully empowers you to do everything you've ever wanted with Android. And even if you just want to watch videos and movies or game on something that's big yet more comfortable in the hand than a tablet, the Z Fold 4 is still a great option to consider. However, if you're not a die-hard tech enthusiast or you already have a Z Fold 3, spending $1,800 or more on this phone might not be worth it. Before you pull the trigger on this purchase, make sure that you really take advantage of everything this phone has to offer, otherwise just get a small tablet, which would certainly be much lighter on the pocket. In any case, there we have it, the new Galaxy Z Fold 4. Let us know in the comments what you think about this foldable phone, stay tuned for more videos like this one, and I'll see you next time.